In the pre-dawn quiet of Jerusalem, air raid sirens shattered the peace. A family rushed to the unforgiving concrete of an underground bunker, seeking safety in steel and stone. Hours later, under the same sky, the same hands were meticulously assembling a fragile tent of wood and leaves. What happens when humanity's deepest fears collide with its most ancient traditions? When the instinct to build impenetrable walls faces a divine invitation to live under an open sky? Tonight, we explore a prophetic dilemma echoing from antiquity, through modern-day conflict, to the very meaning of roof itself. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments, where are you watching us from today? Now, let's unpack the profound insights shaping our understanding of spiritual and physical refuge. Jerusalem, a city perennially steeped in layers of history and prophecy, found itself, once again, in a delicate balance. It was the period of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, a time typically marked by joyful communal gatherings and the construction of temporary dwellings. Yet, this year, an undercurrent of palpable tension permeated the festivities. The familiar scent of myrtle and etrog, usually emblematic of peace and harvest, mingled subtly with an unspoken apprehension. Ancient prophecies from Ezekiel, Zechariah, and Daniel, detailing a future when nations would array themselves against Jerusalem, were being discussed with renewed fervor in synagogues and homes. The urgency of a potential spiritual and moral collapse, long a theoretical construct, now seemed to press against the city's very walls, palpable in the hushed conversations and the watchful gazes of its inhabitants. The world, it was widely acknowledged, felt closer than ever to a definitive, profound turning point, a precipice from which its trajectory would be irrevocably altered. Then, just as the last stars began to fade into the pre-dawn grayness, the fragile peace was violently shattered. A piercing, undulating shriek tore through the crisp morning air, the unmistakable sound of air raid sirens. The mechanical wail, a sound deeply etched into the collective memory of Jerusalem, echoed off stone buildings, instantly transforming the quiet anticipation of dawn into an abrupt, disorienting chaos. Lights flickered on across apartment blocks, illuminating hurried movements. Doors slammed, and the rapid, uneven thud of footsteps on cobblestone streets signaled a city-wide, urgent mobilization. It was a practiced response, born of necessity and survival, yet each siren's call brought with it the fresh sting of fear. Among those roused with jarring immediacy was Rabbi Tovia Singer. His profound insights into sacred texts offered little reprieve from the visceral alarm. His household, already accustomed to the sudden demands of a volatile region, moved with practiced urgency. His wife, her face a mask of grim determination, gathered their children, their small hands instinctively clutching at their parents' garments. The camera, a silent observer, followed their swift, synchronized descent from the quiet domesticity of their home into the cool, stark reality of their designated sanctuary. Their path led them to the community's underground shelter, a bunker of formidable design, its thick, reinforced concrete walls and heavy steel ceiling an emblem of modern human engineering in its resolute, almost defiant, trust in material security. Within its stoic confines, an unspoken declaration was made, that absolute strength lay in these man-made fortifications, impervious to the chaos above. The sequence within the bunker was dominated by a suffocating, almost oppressive claustrophobia. The massive, insulated door clanged shut, a final, definitive seal against the external world, muffling the distant echoes of the sirens into a low, resonant thrum. The air, heavy and slightly metallic, carried the faint, earthy scent of concrete. Emergency lighting, a harsh, yellow glow, cast long, distorted shadows that danced with the nervous movements of the families huddled together. Hushed conversations, punctuated by the soft, fearful whimpers of children and the occasional, strained cough, underscored the inherent human fragility contained within this seemingly impenetrable bastion. Despite the physical solidity of the walls, a pervasive, almost palpable anxiety clung to the air, highlighting the profound paradox: while physically secure, the psychological vulnerability remained starkly exposed. Time inside the bunker stretched, an agonizing, timeless wait where every rustle or distant thud intensified the collective apprehension. Each minute weighed heavily, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that lurked just beyond their reinforced enclosure. Hours later, as a faint, ethereal light began to paint the eastern sky, the distinct, long-drawn sound of the all-clear siren gradually filled the air. It was a starkly different sound from its predecessor, a signal of cessation, of immediate danger averted, allowing for a collective, though often silent, sigh of relief. Rabbi Singer, his family, and the other residents emerged from the subterranean refuge, blinking as their eyes adjusted to the muted hues of dawn. The air outside, though cool and fresh, still carried the faint, acrid scent of recent tension. Yet, for the rabbi, the immediate cessation of danger did not bring a simple return to normal routine. Instead, a more profound, almost spiritual purpose now guided his actions. He moved with deliberate, almost meditative steps directly to his backyard. There, amidst the pre-existing, partially assembled frames of what would soon be their family sukkah, he began a different kind of construction. This was not a structure of concrete and steel, but a fragile, temporary dwelling fashioned from slender wooden poles and a canopy of leafy branches, a design intentionally crafted to leave the open sky visible above, a direct, unfiltered connection to the heavens. This act, deeply ingrained in the millennia-old tradition of Sukkot, presented a dramatic visual and philosophical contrast to the impenetrable bunker from which he had just emerged. The methodical placement of each branch, the careful arrangement of the palm fronds to create a permeable roof, was a profound statement. As he worked, his hands engaged in the ancient ritual, a profound divine irony began to crystallize within the rabbi's consciousness. The very humanity that instinctively sought absolute refuge in the unyielding strength of concrete walls, in structures promising absolute, material security, often overlooked, or perhaps even willfully ignored, the profound truth that true shelter, as illuminated by ancient scriptures and sustained by living tradition, was never meant to be exclusively physical. The irony, searing in its clarity, lay in the juxtaposition, the ultimate symbol of modern self-preservation giving way, in a matter of hours, to a structure deliberately built to be temporary, exposed, and fundamentally reliant on an unseen, spiritual canopy. This stark, lived experience, unfolding during the very week when Israel collectively commemorates the ephemeral nature of human existence, vividly illuminated the core prophetic message. The narrative of Gog and Magog, as eloquently foretold in Ezekiel 38 and Zechariah 12, transcended mere geopolitical conflicts or the clash of armies. It began to manifest, with crystalline precision, as a profound, existential confrontation between two fundamentally divergent types of trust, the trust placed implicitly in the strength of human constructs, in technology, in the illusion of material invulnerability, and the unwavering trust placed in divine providence, even, and perhaps especially, when the earthly roof is fragile. This ongoing dilemma, starkly present in Israel's contemporary reality, extended an urgent, universal question to all of humanity: in whom, or in what, do we truly deposit our ultimate security? The answer, as the rabbi now understood, lay not merely in the structures we build, but in the spirit that guides their construction, or their deliberate dismantling. Following the profound events of the previous dawn, where the raw vulnerability of an air raid alarm clashed with the deliberate fragility of Sukkot, the narrative now shifts to a deeper examination of the ancient prophecies that seem to echo across contemporary Jerusalem. The question of ultimate security, posed by the stark contrast of bunker and sukkah, finds an illuminating, and perhaps startling, answer within the very language of prophecy itself. Guided by the scholarly insights of Rabbi Tovia Singer, we delve into the etymological origins of a name long associated with ultimate conflict, Gog. Rabbi Singer's analysis begins by dissecting the name Gog as it appears in the original Hebrew texts of Ezekiel 38. He reveals that the word Gog shares a profound linguistic root with the Hebrew word Gag, which translates directly to roof. This linguistic connection, often overlooked in modern translations, transforms the conventional understanding of the prophecy from a purely geographical or political confrontation to one steeped in spiritual and philosophical dimensions. The revelation is presented not as a mere linguistic curiosity, but as a pivotal insight, reshaping the very nature of the antagonist. With this etymological anchor, Gog is no longer understood solely as a specific nation or a historical figure, but rather as a pervasive spirit or a systemic philosophy. It symbolizes those entities, whether nations, ideologies, or even individual mindsets, that choose to place their unwavering faith and ultimate reliance upon the illusory solidity of their own creations. This includes the massive structures of human power, the intricate networks of technological advancement, the robust fortresses of physical security, and the self-sufficient confidence derived from accumulated material wealth. This spirit of Gog represents a profound human inclination to construct impenetrable roofs over one's head, believing these man-made covers can truly insulate against all threats, both visible and unseen. It is a belief system that asserts self-reliance as the paramount virtue, often to the exclusion of any dependence on a higher, divine order. The conflict of Gog and Magog, therefore, assumes a more nuanced and visceral meaning. It emerges not merely as a battle of armies or borders, but as a profound philosophical and spiritual embattlement between two distinct types of roofs. On one side stands the concrete roof, represented by the subterranean bunker, the fortified city walls, the advanced missile defense systems, and all forms of technological and material self-protection. This roof promises an unassailable sense of safety, comfort, and control. It offers a tangible, seemingly indestructible barrier against the chaotic unpredictability of the world. However, as the recent events in Jerusalem demonstrated, even the most robust concrete can harbor an underlying anxiety, a subtle reminder of inherent human fragility within its supposedly absolute security. The quiet apprehension inside the bunker, the nervous glances, the palpable tension, these elements underscore the illusory nature of this absolute protection. On the opposing side is the spiritual roof of the sukkah. Constructed from ephemeral branches and leaves, deliberately designed to allow the stars and sky to be visible through its sparse covering, it is a testament to vulnerability and profound faith. This roof, far from offering physical impermeability, symbolizes an intentional embrace of reliance on divine providence. It represents the choice to dwell in a state of deliberate impermanence, recognizing that true security transcends material fortifications. The sukkah, with its open canopy, becomes a powerful counter-narrative to the prevailing global ethos of impenetrable defenses. It proclaims that ultimate protection is found not in the strength of walls, but in the strength of one's trust in the Creator. During Sukkot, this ancient dilemma is not merely discussed, it is lived. The annual Jewish observance, particularly poignant in a city like Jerusalem, becomes a symbolic act of profound resistance. While nations worldwide increasingly invest in ever more sophisticated and ostensibly impenetrable shelters, accumulating vast arsenals and erecting virtual and physical barriers, the people of Israel, during this sacred week, deliberately choose a different path. They move out of their solid homes and into fragile, temporary dwellings. They sit, eat, and often sleep under a roof that is intentionally designed to be permeable, allowing the direct observation of the heavens. This conscious decision, especially after enduring a real-world aerial threat and seeking refuge in a concrete bunker, transforms the ancient ritual into a direct and visceral echo of the prophecy. It is a living question, posed anew in each generation, in every crisis: in whom do we truly place our security? Is it in the strength of our own hands, the genius of our engineering, the impenetrable concrete of our self-made defenses? Or is it in an unseen, eternal canopy, a spiritual roof made of faith and vulnerability, through which the divine light is always visible? Which roof, the chapter implicitly asks, are we truly building for our own security, both physical and spiritual? The choice, the narrative suggests, holds implications far beyond immediate safety. The previous discourse illuminated the profound dichotomy between the concrete bulwark of human security and the spiritual canopy of divine trust, anchored in the etymological revelation of Gog as roof. Now, the narrative extends this understanding to encompass another ancient, yet intensely relevant, symbol, the cloud. During Sukkot, the symbolism of clouds transcends mere meteorological phenomena. It ascends to a spiritual plane, offering profound insights into the nature of divine presence and humanity's relationship with it. The focus shifts to a pivotal prophecy found in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 13. Here, the text describes a vision: "I saw in the night visions, and, behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him." This evocative image, of a central redemptive figure arriving amidst celestial clouds, forms a cornerstone of messianic expectation within Jewish tradition. Rabbi Tovia Singer, in his ongoing interpretation of these convergent prophecies, draws a direct and compelling parallel between this vision and the very essence of the sukkah. Rabbi Singer posits that the Messiah's arrival with the clouds of heaven is not merely a grand display of power, but an intrinsic aspect of his manifestation in humility and vulnerability. He interprets this image as being directly analogous to the sukkah itself, a temporary, fragile dwelling that leaves the sky, and thus the clouds, visible through its roof. The Messianic era, according to this perspective, will not descend upon a humanity fortified within impregnable structures, but rather upon a humanity that has intentionally shed its reliance on concrete and steel, choosing instead to lift its gaze heavenward. The coming of the Messiah, therefore, is contextualized as an event that occurs in an atmosphere of spiritual openness and readiness, a moment when mankind has abandoned the illusion of self-sufficient protection and re-embraced its fundamental dependence on the divine. It is a time when the world, no longer fixated on the impenetrable roofs of its own making, looks up, through the permeable roof of faith, toward the clouds of glory. This interpretation resonates deeply with another cornerstone of Israel's ancient history, the miraculous clouds that guided the Israelites through the perilous desert wilderness following their exodus from Egypt. These were not mere weather patterns, they were a direct manifestation of God's protective presence, shielding them from the harsh sun by day and illuminating their path by night. These clouds of glory served as a continuous reminder that divine sustenance and guidance manifest most powerfully not within the walls of human-built fortresses, but in moments of profound vulnerability and existential dependence. They represent a divine presence that embraces exposure, choosing to reveal itself in the very impermanence and openness of the wilderness, rather than in structures designed for human control and self-preservation. This perspective creates a stark contrast with the prevailing global trends observed in contemporary society. While the world dedicates vast resources to erecting increasingly formidable walls, both physical and metaphorical, in pursuit of absolute security, the divine principle, as elucidated by Sukkot and these prophecies, operates inversely. God's revelation, his deepest connection with humanity, occurs precisely within what is temporary, what is vulnerable, and what is open. It is in the fragile sukkah, under a roof that permits the vastness of the sky to remain visible, that the most profound spiritual truths are unveiled. It is an inverse logic. Strength is found not in impenetrability, but in permeable trust. Building upon this theme of divine connection, the chapter transitions to a profound and tender metaphor found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54. Here, God is not merely depicted as a distant sovereign or a guiding father, but as the intimate and devoted husband of Israel. This matrimonial imagery elevates the relationship to one of deep, covenantal affection and unwavering commitment. Sukkot, within this framework, is presented as the very climax of this intimate union, the tangible expression of this divine marriage. Following Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, a period of intense introspection, repentance, and reconciliation, comes the profound invitation of Sukkot. It is depicted as an explicit invitation from God to his people, to come and dwell with him, to share a communal space, to live under the very fragile roof of his presence. This transition from atonement to intimate cohabitation signifies a movement from forgiveness to profound togetherness. To leave the security of one's permanent home and reside for 7 days beneath the simple, impermanent canopy of branches is therefore portrayed as far more than a mere religious custom or an archaic observance. It is, fundamentally, an act of profound love, a reciprocal gesture of devotion and trust. This dwelling in the sukkah becomes a millennia-old reenactment of a sacred reunion. It is a moment where the Creator and his chosen people symbolically share the same intimate, vulnerable space, stripped of the illusions of permanent, man-made defenses. The sukkah, with its open roof, becomes a bridal chamber, a sanctuary where the covenantal bond is renewed and deepened. It is a powerful declaration that faith, true faith, cannot be contained, cannot be fully protected, by any earthly walls or fortifications. Instead, it flourishes in openness, in the shared vulnerability, and in the unwavering trust that even under a roof of leaves, the divine presence is both immediate and absolute. Sukkot, therefore, emerges as not just a harvest festival, but a profound spiritual wedding feast, a week of intimate communion where the boundaries between heaven and earth become beautifully, vulnerably permeable. With the arrival of the 8th day, the vibrant, temporary communities that had sprung up across Jerusalem began their inevitable dissolution. The Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, concluded with the ceremonial dismantling of the sukkah structures. The ephemeral dwellings, which for 7 days had served as homes, gathering places, and sites of profound spiritual contemplation, were carefully taken apart. Wooden frames were stacked, leafy coverings gathered and prepared for composting, and the intricate decorations lovingly stored away for the following year. This act, seemingly simple, carried a profound weight, marking a transition from a period of deliberate vulnerability and intense divine focus back to the routines of daily life within more permanent structures. Yet, the return to conventional homes was not a return to the status quo. The individuals who had lived under the fragile canopy of the sukkah did not re-enter their solid houses unchanged. The week-long immersion in this ancient ritual, particularly after the jarring experience of an actual air raid and the stark contrast between a concrete bunker and an open-roofed tent, had cultivated a subtle but significant internal transformation. For Rabbi Tovia Singer and his family, the communal experience had etched new layers of understanding onto their faith. The ordinary acts of eating, sleeping, and praying under a sky-visible roof, combined with the recent threat that had driven them to material shelter, had crystallized a profound lesson. While humanity undeniably requires physical dwelling places for protection and sustenance, the deeper, more essential truth is that the human soul inherently belongs to the infinite. It yearns for a connection that transcends the finite boundaries of any man-made enclosure. This ritual served as a potent, lived allegory. It underscored an undeniable reality: physical shelter is indeed a necessary component of human existence. It provides safety from the elements, a refuge from immediate threats, and a foundation for community. However, the lesson of Sukkot, powerfully reinforced by contemporary events, is that this material shelter must never be allowed to supplant, replace, or overshadow the fundamental reliance on divine trust. When the pursuit of physical security becomes an end in itself, when the structures of human ingenuity, whether bunkers, technologies, or elaborate defense systems, are invested with ultimate faith, they paradoxically become barriers to true spiritual safety. They can foster an illusion of self-sufficiency that obscures the overarching, eternal presence of God. This pivotal understanding forms an incisive connection between the ancient prophecy of Gog and Magog, as expounded by Rabbi Singer, and the urgent realities of the present day. The end of times, as revealed through these converging insights, is not primarily characterized by a cataclysmic war of tanks and missiles, or a conventional clash of geopolitical powers. Instead, it is fundamentally a profound crisis of faith. It is a spiritual schism that manifests as a global divergence in values and priorities. The world, the narrative suggests, is dramatically bifurcated into two distinct categories. On one side are those who, consciously or unconsciously, live under armored roofs of self-sufficiency. These are individuals, societies, and nations that place their ultimate confidence in their own strength, their accumulated wealth, their technological prowess, and their impenetrable defenses. Their roofs are solid, opaque, designed to block out the unknown and the divine, embodying a philosophy of human control and self-reliance. On the other side stand those who still possess the courage, a courage born of faith and honed by tradition, to leave the sky visible. These are individuals and communities who, like those observing Sukkot, embrace vulnerability as a pathway to divine connection. They understand that true security is not found in the absence of threat, but in unwavering trust amidst uncertainty. Their roofs are permeable, allowing the light of the stars and the vastness of the heavens to penetrate, symbolizing an openness to the divine and a recognition of human dependence. This profound division underscores the true nature of the coming confrontation, a spiritual battle for the soul of humanity, fought over the very architecture of belief and trust. The climax of this ancient prophecy, therefore, culminates not in a military triumph or defeat, but in a divine revelation. The messianic promise is clear: the Messiah will come, not descending into the fortified enclaves built by human hands, not appearing within the confines of impregnable walls, but rather with the clouds of heaven. This imagery, deeply resonant with the clouds of glory that guided Israel in the desert and the open sky of the sukkah, signifies a coming that will bypass the illusions of human strength. Only those who have learned to live under these clouds, who have cultivated the capacity to see beyond the immediate, to trust through fragility, and to place their unwavering faith in the divine despite the world's clamor for concrete security, will possess the spiritual discernment to recognize him. They are the ones whose gaze is already directed heavenward, accustomed to seeing the sacred through the temporary. As the last remnants of Rabbi Singer's sukkah are carefully packed away, leaving behind only the impression of where it once stood, a powerful final image emerges. The space, now empty of its physical structure, is nonetheless filled with the lingering echo of its spiritual purpose. It stands as an enduring invitation to personal introspection. The video concludes with a silent, yet profound, call to reflection. Each individual is left with the fundamental choice, to seek refuge beneath the self-made, armored roof of human ingenuity, or to embrace the spiritual canopy, the open and vulnerable roof of faith, that leaves the infinite sky, and the promise of the divine, eternally visible. The question, implicitly posed, is not merely about physical safety, but about the very orientation of one's soul in a world teetering between collapse and revelation. The ceremonial dismantling of the sukkah concludes a week of deliberate vulnerability, yet it signals not an end, but a profound recalibration of perspective. The return to permanent homes carries with it an indelible imprint, a transformation born from dwelling beneath permeable boughs. The revelation of Gog as roof redefines a prophecy once seen as purely geopolitical, shifting the ultimate conflict to the inner landscapes of human trust. Similarly, the messianic promise, foretelling a sacred presence veiled not in fortresses but in the very clouds that once sheltered a desert journey, aligns perfectly with this profound understanding, accessible only to those whose gaze is already accustomed to the heavens. This journey through ancient texts, illuminated by contemporary events, unveils a singular, profound question: where do we truly build our shelter? The enduring lesson is that physical fortresses, while offering transient security, can inadvertently obscure the eternal. True refuge, the narrative suggests, resides not in the impenetrable structures of human making, but in the deliberate embrace of vulnerability, in the courage to allow the infinite sky to remain visible above us. It is a choice between the illusion of absolute control and the profound surrender to divine providence, a choice made manifest in the very architecture of our lives. In a world increasingly defined by the pursuit of unyielding security, which roof resonates most deeply with your own understanding of shelter, the concrete or the canopy? Share your reflections in the comments below. If this exploration has illuminated your path, we invite you to support our mission by liking this video and subscribing to Scripture's Flow for more in-depth analyses of sacred texts and their enduring wisdom.